The marble floor gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the Meridian Hotel lobby, each streak of the mop reflecting Keisha's determined face as she worked. The expensive Italian tiles had cost more than most people's yearly salary, but, to the staff watching her scrub on her hands and knees, she was just another cleaning girl who'd made the mistake of spilling coffee near the front desk. "Get every spot," the day manager Victoria Brennan had commanded, her voice dripping with the kind of contempt reserved for those she considered beneath her station. "Make it spotless, or you're out on the street by morning." What Victoria didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Keisha Williams, 26 years old with a master's degree in hospitality management from Cornell, was about to inherit everything they held dear. The phone call had come 3 days earlier, changing everything. Keisha had been living in Chicago, working as a junior manager at a boutique hotel, when her father's lawyer contacted her with news that shattered her world. Marcus Williams, the father she'd never really known, had died in a car accident. The man who'd sent birthday cards with crisp $100 bills but had never once called her on the phone, had left her something extraordinary. A controlling stake in Meridian Hotels, a chain of luxury properties worth over $200 million. But there was a condition in the will, one that made Keisha's blood run cold. She had to work at the flagship Meridian Hotel in downtown Atlanta for 30 days without revealing her identity. Only then would she officially inherit. Her father's lawyer, a stern man named Richard Hawthorne, had explained that Marcus wanted his daughter to understand the business from the ground up, to see how employees were really treated when the owner wasn't watching. Keisha had arrived at the hotel a week ago, her resume carefully crafted to show only basic hospitality experience. She'd applied for a housekeeping position, knowing it would give her access to every corner of the property. What she hadn't expected was the systematic cruelty that ran through the hotel like poison in the water supply. Victoria Brennan ruled the day shift with an iron fist wrapped in designer clothing. She was 42, blonde, and had clawed her way up from front desk agent to day manager over 15 years. Her office walls were covered with commendations and photos of her shaking hands with Marcus Williams at various company events. She spoke about the late owner with reverence, as if he'd been a personal friend, rather than a man who'd visited the property maybe twice a year. The abuse had started on Keisha's second day. She'd been assigned to clean the penthouse suite, a sprawling space that occupied the entire top floor of the 30-story building. The previous guest had been a tech billionaire who'd apparently hosted a party that ended with red wine stains on the white Persian rug and what looked like chocolate handprints on the silk wallpaper. "You have 2 hours," Victoria had announced, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. "The next guest arrives at 3, and if this suite isn't perfect, you're gone. No second chances, no excuses." The last girl who couldn't handle the pressure lasted exactly 1 day. Keisha had worked like a woman possessed, her hands raw from scrubbing, her back aching from bending over every surface. She'd finished with minutes to spare, the suite gleaming like something from a magazine. But when Victoria returned to inspect, she'd found fault with everything. A microscopic water spot on the bathroom mirror, a barely visible thread on the bedspread, dust motes floating in the afternoon sunlight. "This is completely unacceptable," Victoria had declared, her voice rising loud enough for other staff members to hear. "Are you even trying? Do you know what kind of clientele we serve here? These people expect perfection, not whatever this is." The other housekeepers had watched the verbal assault with a mixture of sympathy and relief that they weren't the target. Maria Santos, a woman in her 50s who'd been cleaning these rooms for 20 years, had later pulled Keisha aside. "She does this to everyone new," Maria had whispered, her English heavily accented but her meaning clear. "Breaks them down, makes them quit. Only the strong ones stay, and even then she makes us pay for every mistake." But Keisha was learning that Victoria's cruelty went beyond mere perfectionism. The day manager had a system of favorites and outcasts, and she used her position to reward those who fed her information about their coworkers, while punishing anyone who showed independence or questioned her methods. James Crawford, the night janitor, had worked at the hotel for 8 years. He was a veteran who'd been injured in Afghanistan and walked with a slight limp. Victoria had been trying to force him out for months, claiming his disability made him unsuitable for the job. She'd been writing him up for imaginary infractions, allegedly missing spots during his cleaning rounds, taking too long on his breaks, having a bad attitude with guests despite the fact that he worked nights and rarely interacted with visitors. The breaking point came when Keisha witnessed Victoria's treatment of Elena Vasquez, a 19-year-old who'd started as a housekeeping assistant the same week as Keisha. Elena was putting herself through community college, working double shifts to pay for her classes and help support her mother, who was battling cancer. The incident that would change everything happened on a Tuesday morning. Elena had been cleaning the executive boardroom when she accidentally knocked over a crystal vase while dusting the conference table. The vase shattered, sending glass across the marble floor. It was the kind of accident that could happen to anyone. But Victoria had been looking for an excuse to get rid of Elena ever since the girl had politely declined to join the day manager's unofficial spy network. Victoria had stormed into the boardroom like an avenging angel, her heels clicking against the floor with military precision. She'd surveyed the damage with theatrical disgust, shaking her head as if she'd discovered a murder scene. "This is exactly what I expected from someone like you," Victoria had announced, her voice carrying the particular venom she reserved for those she considered beneath her. "That vase was worth more than you'll make in 6 months. Do you have any idea what kind of impression this gives our guests?" Elena had tried to apologize, her voice trembling with anxiety. She had offered to pay for the vase, to work extra shifts to cover the cost, anything to keep her job. But Victoria had been unmoved. "You're finished," the day manager had declared. "Clean up this mess, turn in your uniform, and get out. Don't expect a reference, and don't even think about applying to work at any other hotel in this city. I have connections everywhere." That's when Keisha had made her decision. She'd watched Elena break down crying in the supply closet, this hard-working young woman who'd never heard anyone being destroyed by someone who wielded power like a weapon. The plan had started forming in her mind that afternoon, and by the time she went home to her modest apartment, she knew exactly what she was going to do. The first step was research. Keisha spent her evenings going through every detail of the hotel's operations, using her management background to understand the financial structure, the staffing patterns, the guest relations protocols. She studied Victoria's schedule, her habits, her relationships with other employees and upper management. What she discovered was a web of corruption that went far beyond simple workplace bullying. Victoria had been skimming money from the employee tip pool, claiming it was for administrative costs, but actually depositing it into her personal account. She'd been taking kickbacks from suppliers, approving overpriced contracts in exchange for cash payments. Most damning of all, she'd been selling information about high-profile guests to tabloid photographers, allowing them to know when celebrities would be arriving and departing. The evidence was all there, hidden in plain sight for anyone who knew how to look. Keisha began documenting everything, taking photos of invoices, recording conversations, building a case that would be impossible to ignore. But she knew that simply reporting Victoria to corporate wouldn't be enough. The day manager had friends in high places, people who'd protected her for years. Keisha needed something more dramatic, something that would expose the truth in a way that couldn't be covered up or dismissed. The opportunity came when she learned about the hotel's most important event of the year, the annual Marcus Williams Memorial Gala. It was a charity fundraiser held in the hotel's grand ballroom, attended by the city's elite major donors and all the corporate executives from Meridian Hotels. Victoria had been planning the event for months, using it as a showcase for her management skills and her supposed devotion to the late owner's memory. Keisha realized this was her chance. She could expose Victoria's corruption in front of everyone who mattered, and she could finally reveal her own identity. But first, she needed to survive the next 2 weeks without getting fired, and Victoria seemed determined to make that impossible. The harassment intensified as the gala approached. Victoria found fault with everything Keisha did, no matter how perfectly she performed her duties. She was forced to work double shifts, to take on tasks that weren't part of her job description, to endure verbal abuse that would have sent most people running for the door. The coffee incident had been the latest escalation. Keisha had been carrying a tray of coffee to the executive offices when Victoria had deliberately stepped into her path, causing the collision that sent hot liquid across the marble floor. The day manager had then made a grand show of outrage, demanding that Keisha clean up the mess while she stood over her, criticizing every motion. But as Keisha scrubbed the floor, she was thinking about the USB drive hidden in her apartment, filled with evidence that would destroy Victoria's career and send her to prison. She was thinking about the legal documents that would make her the owner of this hotel in exactly 11 days. And she was thinking about the speech she would give at the gala, when she would finally reveal the truth about who she really was. The plan required perfect timing. Keisha had arranged for Richard Hawthorne, her father's lawyer, to attend the gala as a guest. She'd also contacted an investigative journalist who specialized in corporate corruption, providing him with enough evidence to make him very interested in attending the event. The FBI agent, who'd been investigating reports of tip skimming in the hospitality industry, had also received an anonymous tip about the gala, along with copies of the evidence Keisha had gathered. On the morning of the gala, Victoria was in her element. She strutted through the hotel like a peacock, inspecting every detail, barking orders at the staff, and basking in the praise of the corporate executives who'd arrived early for the event. She'd purchased a new dress for the occasion, a designer gown that cost more than most of her employees made in a month. The ballroom looked magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the polished floor, and elaborate floral arrangements filled the air with the scent of roses and jasmine. A full orchestra was setting up on the stage, and the auction items, donated by wealthy patrons, were displayed around the room like treasures in a museum. Keisha spent the day working behind the scenes, helping to prepare the room while Victoria took all the credit. She watched the day manager pose for photos with visiting dignitaries, listened to her give interviews to society reporters about her dedication to carrying on Marcus Williams's legacy. The irony was almost too much to bear. As the evening approached, Keisha changed into the outfit she'd carefully selected for the occasion. It wasn't the designer gown she could have afforded, but a simple black dress that would allow her to blend in while still looking professional. She'd arranged to work as part of the serving staff during the event, a position that would give her access to every corner of the ballroom. The guests began arriving at 7 o'clock, a parade of luxury cars dropping off Atlanta's social elite. Keisha recognized many faces from the society pages: politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and philanthropists. They air-kissed and posed for photographers, their jewelry catching the light like stars against the dark fabric of their evening wear. Victoria was in her glory, working the room like a seasoned politician. She'd positioned herself near the entrance, greeting every important guest personally, making sure they knew she was responsible for the evening's success. She spoke about Marcus Williams with practiced emotion, describing him as a visionary who'd trusted her with his life's work. The auction began at 8:30, with various items being sold to raise money for the Marcus Williams Foundation, a charity that provided scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing careers in hospitality. Keisha had to admire the cruel irony of Victoria running a charity event while simultaneously crushing the dreams of young people like Elena. As the evening progressed, Keisha moved through the room like a ghost, refilling glasses, clearing plates, and positioning herself for what was to come. She spotted Richard Hawthorne near the bar, a distinguished man in his 60s who'd been her father's friend for 30 years. The journalist was mingling with other guests, his recorder hidden in his jacket pocket. The FBI agent was there too, posing as a businessman from out of town. The moment came during the final auction item, a week-long stay at the hotel's penthouse suite. Victoria had taken the microphone to describe the prize, her voice carrying across the ballroom as she detailed the luxury accommodations and exclusive amenities. The bidding was spirited, with the final price reaching $15,000. "This is exactly the kind of generosity that Marcus Williams inspired," Victoria announced, her voice thick with manufactured emotion. "He believed that success meant nothing unless you used it to lift others up. That's why this hotel, his pride and joy, continues to operate according to his principles of excellence and compassion." That's when Keisha made her move. She walked calmly to the front of the room, her heart pounding but her face composed. She could see the confusion in Victoria's eyes as a member of the serving staff approached the stage. The day manager's mouth opened to object, but Keisha was already speaking. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Keisha Williams, and I'm Marcus Williams's daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Every conversation stopped, every glass froze halfway to waiting lips. Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror. Keisha continued, her voice steady and clear. "I know this comes as a surprise to many of you. I've been working at this hotel for the past 3 weeks, following the terms of my father's will. He wanted me to understand the business from the ground up, to see how employees are really treated when the owner isn't watching." Victoria tried to interrupt, stepping toward the microphone, but Keisha held up a hand that somehow commanded silence. "What I've discovered is that this hotel, which my father built as a testament to excellence and dignity, has become a place where hard-working people are abused, where corruption runs rampant, and where the very values he stood for are being destroyed by those who claim to honor his memory." The crowd was riveted now, sensing drama unfolding before their eyes. Keisha could see Victoria's face cycling through panic, rage, and calculation as she tried to figure out how to salvage the situation. "For the past 3 weeks, I've been documenting a pattern of abuse that would horrify my father. I've seen employees fired for imaginary infractions, watched as a war veteran was harassed because of his disability, and witnessed a young woman's dreams crushed because she wouldn't participate in a spy network designed to control and intimidate the staff." Victoria finally found her voice. "This is outrageous. I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave immediately. Security." But Keisha was ready for this. She pulled out her phone and displayed the legal documents on the screen, holding it up for everyone to see. "As of today, I am the majority owner of Meridian Hotels, and I have evidence of criminal activity that I've already shared with the FBI." The room erupted in chaos. Guests were talking over each other, trying to process what they were hearing. Victoria was shouting denials, but her voice was being drowned out by the crowd. That's when the FBI agent stepped forward, showing his badge. "Victoria Brennan, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Victoria was led away in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence. The gala guests slowly began to disperse, but many lingered to congratulate Keisha on her courage, and to express their shock at what they'd witnessed. The auction proceeds were donated as planned, but the real story was just beginning to unfold. Over the next few days, the full extent of Victoria's corruption became public. The local news ran stories about the abusive manager, who'd been stealing from employees and selling celebrity information to tabloids. The FBI investigation revealed that she'd embezzled over $200,000 over the past 5 years, money that was supposed to go to the very scholarship fund she'd been promoting at the gala. But for Keisha, the most satisfying moment came when she was able to personally apologize to the employees who'd suffered under Victoria's reign. She reinstated James Crawford with full back pay and a promotion to head of facilities management. Elena was offered a full scholarship to the hotel management program at Georgia State University, along with a guaranteed position as a management trainee after graduation. Maria Santos, the veteran housekeeper, became the new head of housekeeping with authority to hire and train new staff according to principles of respect and dignity. The employee tip pool was restored to its original purpose, with full transparency and employee oversight. The hotel itself underwent a transformation that went far beyond personnel changes. Keisha implemented new policies that emphasized employee development, fair wages, and a zero-tolerance approach to harassment. She established an anonymous reporting system and brought in outside consultants to conduct regular audits of management practices. 6 months later, the Meridian Hotel had become a model for the industry. Employee turnover dropped to nearly zero, guest satisfaction scores reached record highs, and the property was featured in hospitality magazines as an example of how treating workers well translated directly into business success. Keisha stood in the penthouse suite one evening, looking out at the Atlanta skyline and thinking about the journey that had brought her here. The view was spectacular, but it was the knowledge that she'd honored her father's memory and protected vulnerable people that gave her the deepest satisfaction. She'd learned that revenge, when it was really about justice, didn't need to be cruel or vindictive. Sometimes the most powerful response to abuse was simply to turn on the lights and let everyone see what was really happening. Victoria was serving a 5-year sentence for her crimes, but more importantly, she'd been stripped of the power to hurt anyone else. The girl who'd scrubbed floors while plotting the downfall of a corrupt manager had become a woman who understood that true strength came from lifting others up, not tearing them down. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. The marble floors that once witnessed Keisha's humiliation now gleamed under different circumstances. As she walked through the lobby each morning, employees greeted her with genuine respect, not fear. The same crystal vase Elena had broken sat replaced in the boardroom. But now it held fresh flowers, a daily reminder that accidents happen and people deserve second chances, not destruction.